super nice to have you guys on the show. Chris and Sam from Alpha Academy. Excited to be talking to you guys. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Of course. Let us start with how you guys started working on the project and maybe a little bit about your background, how you start with NFTs and what did you do before. And maybe you guys start.
Chris, do you want to take this one or are you happy for me to?
Yeah, I can jump in. So what was I doing before? I was basically working full-time for a creative agency as a creative technologist.
Oh, nice.
Actually, the same agency where I met Sam. He was a art director before he left and went to another agency. And so we'd worked together for quite a few years there. I kind of got my beginnings actually as a designer more than a developer. And I've always kind of had this fascination with technology and through university, although I was doing a lot with the creative side, I was always sort of tapping into technology, playing around with AR and then later on VR.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the space that I was playing in before. And I guess there was a natural progression into the crypto world when that really started to become big, probably around 2016, 2017, and then 2018. And I guess through the early days of 2018, where I think there was that one of the first really big crashes, and it kind of washed me out, and I became, I guess, a little bit bitter about the whole thing, just from personal involvement in that, and I didn't really touch it until a lot later on then.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically how Sam and I overlap. We sort of had a professional working relationship prior to then collaborating on this project. But I guess I'll let Sam tell his story because he's the one who really kind of instigated this project.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I come from I studied design and illustration and sort of entered very early on in sort of working for an illustration agency in a very commercial capacity, doing stuff with kind of ad agencies, lots of storyboards, sort of, editorial work, bits and pieces, but very commercial, very much meeting a client's brief. But as that sort of progressed, I've kind of, got into sort of working more in sort of experiential marketing and sort of events, which is sort of where Chris and I met. And we worked doing that for a couple of years together, and that's sort of where I was more focusing on sort of graphic design and that sort of nature, and sort of made my way up through that, then becoming senior designer, then art director, etc. And then everyone, had some really close friends who very much, in I say early days, but kind of 4 or 5 years ago, sort of got pretty heavy into crypto and then particularly only in the last couple of years, one of my good friends dived into the NFT space and was just banging on my door going, dude, your skill set, what you do, everything, that just, you check it out. So it took me a while. I think like everyone, and especially newcomers and stuff, it's sort of, you have to sit with it a while, but then I think it just kind of clicked and made sense, and so I sort of just took the plunge and basically started as an individual artist, not knowing a lot of kind of the obviously the dev or the tech side of things, but just having a platform like OpenSea where an artist can just upload their work and all that sort of thing. So sort of thought, all right, I kind of had an idea for a collection. I've sort of always drawn kind of characters is sort of my default, and if you look through any of my old sketchbooks or whatever, there's just endless kind of pages of characters and stuff. And so sort of really explored that a little bit. And that's when I had this kind of my initial collection, which was only 101. And it was called the Exile series. And it was sort of, the kind of PFP style thing. But essentially everyone was a one of one, as in, nothing was generated. It was me just, kind of creating one, then, the next one, etc. And, that got some eyes. I mean, obviously it was quite small in the scheme of, big projects and all that stuff. But I guess, if anything, it just sort of made me realize, oh, wow, this is sort of, really exciting, really interesting space to be in. And above all is the opportunity to sort of just do what I want to do, which is really exciting. So, that kind of happened, I think about September last year, and then subsequently kind of released a sort of a, straight after, what was kind of happening at the same time, a sort of, secondary series called Exalt, which was sort of just more the heads of this character. And I had dropped them to kind of all the collectors and then kind of released the rest and sold them. And then it was sort of like, okay, well, what's next? And obviously having worked with Chris and, we're in a professional capacity, but also, we're very much friends, during our working career at the agency, and basically, and kind of went to him one day and was like, dude, I mean, there's this, all the kind of, 10K collections, all that sort of thing. I mean, just the idea of the generative thing, the creating that sort of, body of work where each artwork is essentially, part of a tapestry or a piece of the puzzle to this larger sort of series, I think really interests me. And, I don't think and Chris, I don't want to speak for you, but I don't think it took much convincing, because both of us found it super interesting in a space that's, really kind of all over, everyone's trying to figure out what it is. And so we just thought, let's kind of give it a go. And yeah, I mean, that's sort of where it began, and that's kind of how we both came together to sort of start the project.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I love how you guys met through your professional life and our friends in real life as well. I think it helps a lot to have this strong connection and knowing each other for a longer time, rather than maybe you guys being living across the globe in different corners of the world. So yeah, but as you also said, 10K collection, right? And yours is a 3K collection. How did you guys come to this conclusion? I mean, you also started with only 100 101s, and I think it's also a good starting point for artists to get themselves out there with a smaller collection. And but you made the decision to not go with 10K, but rather with a 3K collection, right?
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple of reasons behind that, and it was very intentional. And I suppose in full transparency, like Chris and I, we were much more interested in sort of, going through the process, creating the collection, sort of, combining both our skill sets. And, Chris obviously, and I don't think he's mentioned this yet, but, has a background teaching generative design, obviously me loving sort of characters and whatnot. And it was more about, we sort of saw this potential in creating this thing, and we really started at a sort of humble level. I think, Chris, when we first started, I think 500 was thrown around as a number to release, and then kind of 1,000. And I think it was more on the back of, on just the concept, which I suppose we can get to later, but the kind of the ideas and the breadth of sort of the assets and stuff, that it was almost like, are we going to do it justice, kind of keeping those numbers way down? So we kind of
trying to find that sweet spot.
Yeah. And I think the reason, like, I think there's more than enough content there to have done a 10K collection. But at the same time, we were both very aware that we're sort of entering this space, and we didn't want to, I mean, which we've kind of used as many approaches within sort of what we're doing. We didn't want to run or before we walked, and we wanted to sort of build it. And, again, can't speak for other projects and, bigger teams, all this sort of thing. But, there is something that I think, a lot of people, and you can see it constantly, and you can see projects where, I guess people think, developing that huge collection, but don't really realize all the things that then come after that, and suddenly having this huge fan base and these expectations and all those sorts of things, which is part and parcel with the game. But I guess we were just very conscious and just didn't want to feel irresponsible suddenly releasing something that was suddenly big when we didn't kind of, we hadn't gone through the process of developing it ourselves and having the means to know where we're going to take it and how we're going to grow it. Yeah.
True. Yeah. And when did you guys, maybe you can talk me through the timeline of the project. When was the launch date, and what was the minting price and stuff like that? And how was it possible for someone to get get a mint? And was there like a process behind it, or allow lists being given away with other projects?
Yeah, so well, this is a good test of my memory here. The pre-sale mint day was the 17th of February.
Okay.
And then the sale was the 19th. So the general mint day was the 19th of February. And it was 0.07 ETH to mint either in the pre-sale or the sale, unless you held one of Sam's previous artworks. Obviously, we really wanted to make sure that we were acknowledging those kind of core people who had been there from the beginning and backing Sam from the beginning and a fan of his art. And so that was 0.05 ETH for anyone who held an Exile or Exalt. And so working backwards from there, the whitelist process, we did have a whitelist, obviously, for the pre-sale. And that was primarily given to those who are early in the Discord and through some of the giveaway competitions, just around obviously trying to generate interest and a bit of social media amplification, I suppose, just getting the word out there, using that whitelist to attract people in and find people who were very keen. I think we had, how many people did we end up whitelisting, Sam? Was it 400? From memory,
thereabouts. Yeah. So it must. I think it was about 400 public, and then thereabouts 100 that would have been the Exalt holders. Yeah, from memory. And I suppose another thing with that is, to what Chris was saying, we're also very conscious. I mean, there's lots of stuff in the space that everyone, I know there's lots of debates about whitelists and what they are, and if it's kind of good for a project, good for the individual, the psyche of this. We were very adamant we didn't want any kind of grind nonsense, any leveling up stuff. I mean, there's definitely times when I guess it does make sense, and for some projects, etc. But it just didn't feel like we didn't want people losing sleep or not, not basically doing, enjoying their lives and doing their other commitments, and trying to get them to just hang in our Discord as much as the kind of the hype train is sort of deemed absolutely necessary for every project success. But I suppose within that, I mean, we were very active, just keeping eyes on things. We were bumping people up when we just saw they were being active, but not kind of saying, if you do this or if you spend this long here, you'll get whitelisted. So so I mean, it was quite a passionate kind of core group of people that that sort of ended up on the whitelist, which was really nice. And a lot of them are still the people that are turning up every day in our Discord and really, kind of giving the project energy, sort of, sharing things and doing all the things you just love a community to do, and really respect that their time and their effort, being alongside us. Yeah.
Interesting. And when did you, I mean, you said you launched, or the minting started in Feb, but when did you guys start with putting yourselves out there and announcing that you are starting with a new and fresh collection? How long did it take to build this community?
Yeah, look, I suppose, and yeah, I mean, to Chris's point, dates a little bit hazy, but from memory, there would have been maybe like a silhouette teaser. Don't fact check me, but it feels like maybe end of November, December somewhere, Chris. Okay. I could be wrong. But and then it was sort of that slow build up. I mean, we look, and again, I kind of looked at the sort of some of the influency things and all that, and sort of was exploring that, and then decided that's not the road. I don't know if that's the kind of sort of how to kind of attract people and the sort of, tactics and strategy we wanted to use. So we're very much sort of just focusing on organic growth and just trying to engage people as everyone's shouting into the space, trying to get people's attention. But, we really did believe in what we had, and really hoped that sort of the art and the, I guess, not just the art, but I guess the quality and the kind of effort put into the artwork first and foremost, really sort of shone through. And so I guess, from let's just call it late November through to kind of, mid-Feb, we were kind of promoting the project and obviously sharing and, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, doing some whitelist giveaways, obviously collabing with other projects that we thought were interesting and, and kind of doing those shared things. I mean, all the kind of standard stuff that you see for most projects, especially in those early days when you're just trying to find your feet and you're just trying to get, getting eyeballs on things, sort of the one of the kind of the first steps, I guess. Yeah.
Cool.
I'd say it was probably around 3 weeks or maybe a little bit more, a month, that we had the Discord open, and that's when we really started obviously to ramp things up. So we took our time, and obviously this was our first drop. So we just wanted to make sure that we were really confident about the quality of the product and everything was kind of ready to go before we really started pushing it. And we also didn't want to just be stuck in that cycle of just kind of teasing images and things like that for months and months, and dragging that out. We just wanted to have sort of like a short, exciting build up and then launch, and then that was the next step, right? Then it's everything you can do after that. And because we had sort of run the generator hundreds of times, we knew that there were some really exciting combinations. We were kind of just really excited to get it out there as well, right? Like we didn't want to build that up for too long when we could just put it in the hands of people and show them how good the art was. And then that's really where we felt like we were earning the trust after the launch, rather than just asking for a lot of trust before the launch.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it was really hard because, there was like, and again, a lot of projects show, all their teasers and stuff, and you do end up seeing a lot of the best of everything that projects show. And then, there can be, at times quite an underwhelming sort of result when it's the reveal and stuff. So I was, I think we both were, but I was definitely in a kind of constant battle of like, how much do we show people? But also I want so much of it to be a surprise and be interesting, and lots of little like aha moments and lots of little kind of, little bits and pieces for people to discover and obviously, reveal and trade and et cetera, et cetera. So there was definitely this sort of, inattention of just wanting to show as much as possible, but then also very conscious that, but then, obviously there's no surprise at the reveal. So, so, it was a really interesting period and a really, I mean, again, anyone who's gone through a project or started a project just knows kind of that there's, even if you come from dev world or marketing world, whatever, there's still so much for everyone to sort of figure out in this space, and how best to sort of, present yourself and present your project and how you go about things. And there's obviously a lot of stress involved, but it's also really fun just trying to figure these things out and sort of see what works and see what doesn't, and sort of obviously hopefully take a lot of learnings along the way.
Of course. I mean, you learn always along the way, as you said. And we've been talking about the art. I think we should maybe also show the art right now, right? And talk about the art there then as well. If we can do the screen share, Chris. Oh, that's perfect timing.
On cue.
Oh, those are the the initial ones are the 101s, right? How many do you have?
So there was sort of, I mean, the gold obviously all hand done, as in, I mean, they're kind of but
course.
There's sort of four very specific one-of-ones, which are the house captains.
Okay.
So I
Nice.
mean, Chris, I think I've got to give you credit for the initial spark of that idea, but I guess that was another thing that, we did work work on this for a long time. And I guess, just talking about that progression that, this character wasn't the first character I drew, and wasn't the first test, and wasn't, and I think, we kind of had this idea, I guess, where the project came from, really trying to think about, what's something we'd really have some fun with, and two, what can we avoid that in an oversaturated space of certain, just go to kind of,
of course,
ideas, if you want to call them that, or visuals. But yeah, I think I've mentioned this before in space or whatever, but I think it was looking at some old school photos that I was down at my parents' place, and that kind of idea of, obviously a PFP, and the idea of being a kid and nostalgia and all those nice things. We just thought that was a really fun idea. So that's kind of where, this, as if this was sort of a photo school day, and these kids obviously were all part of the same school. But I think, Chris, somewhere, I do feel like it was you that kind of, just, I guess, workshopped or came up with the idea of what if they were houses. And I think instantly we both knew that was a super exciting idea and sort of an elevation on kind of, just 3,000 of the same base characters. So, kind of, I guess, changed momentum a little bit, and we started looking, okay, well, what if there's 4 different houses that all have their kind of own look and I guess own themes and own concepts around them.
I think I'll take credit for that. But I think that was kind of that was probably the moment as well when we both just felt like it was the right direction as well. Like we'd thrown around a few different ideas and they're kind of cool, but there was nothing that really compelled us to commit. And just we were both kind of just searching for just like some angle that felt unique and different, that would add another layer to the project.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. No,
I love the artwork. I mean, it's a little bit, let's say, different than the usual NFT cute PFP projects art, because with those thinner lines, it looks more, it looks more detailed and also more, that it looks like you guys put more work into it because it's more detailed. Yeah, basically it.
I mean, that's, and that was very specific. I mean, if, again, a listener, anyone in their own time, if you, look at sort of some of those, characters, especially some of the other traits zoomed in and stuff. I mean, there is a lot of kind of thought and effort put into certain things. And then I think especially, looking at the themes of these different houses, as well as, I guess, all the kind of combinations of traits and how certain things will and won't work with other things, which, again, that's a whole other conversation is, the kind of the effort put in, especially, me creating them, but then Chris obviously having to build this generator that catered for this. There was a lot of effort kind of put in that, and that was something that was really fun, stressful, tiring, exciting to sort of figure out along the way.
And that was definitely a big incentive for us as well, as a reason to step into the generative space, because I think we were both really keen to prove that we could do a really high quality generative project that just didn't look generative. And that was kind of what the driving force was there. That's why we kind of just really, I guess, punished ourselves to create all these kind of exceptions and rules so that every artwork should look like it was really considered, even though it ended up coming out of a generator.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? That's actually true that you mentioned that, because usually a generative art project is, let's say, not so sophisticated, or let's say it's a little bit easier. But here you can see it's with all those shadows and attention to details. And even though you used the generator and made all those rules and exceptions, I think it was a lot of work to do.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, there's lots of little things like if you get this top trait, then you've also got to get this other trait that sits between the background and the body trait. And, I think, you look at a lot of projects and that's fine. They've kind of got that linear sort of, background, body, outfit, hats, eyes, nose, mouth, done, special, unique, whatever. Which is, fine. But I think we were like, oh, this is going to be so hard. And that's why we're like, but that's why we're going to do it, because, we just thought if it's easy, everyone's kind of, and we all know that there's, there's so many projects coming out constantly. So, we just wanted to challenge ourselves ultimately, and again, looking at the houses, thinking about all the color palettes, how you can kind of make sure, they sort of look in sync and the different houses work. So, there was definitely a lot of consideration and workshopping and kind of, trial and error going through it.
And I guess we should say, just because we're so used to talking about the houses, the
I
four
wanted to
houses that we
ask.
have.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, of
what's it
course, of
about?
course.
This?
Yeah.
So it's just so
No,
obvious
no,
to us
all
because we
good.
just kind of like lived in its world.
Yeah.
Um, Organica, New, Psychedelia, and Retro Groove. And I got to give all credit to Sam for those four final houses, which have their own really cool, distinct visual style. So maybe Sam, you can just talk a little bit more about that, and I can show some examples here. Like this is
Yeah,
Organica.
yeah. So yeah, like I think looking at themes and as as opposed to not very kind of heavy-handed, obvious themes, wanted to kind of come up with some themes that are a little bit more abstract and a bit more interesting. That I guess one gave a uniqueness, but also just kind of gave a bit of room to move and sort of just think a bit out of the box in sort of the different bits and pieces and kind of visuals that could make up these certain houses. So.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I think Organica was pretty obvious. Just everything sort of nature or animal, flora, fauna, etc. Kind of got minerals, rocks, all bits and pieces in there. And I just think in terms of our natural world on Earth, everything, there's just such a rich sort of rich visuals to tap into. So that was sort of a really obvious, exciting one. New, which is on the screen, which actually new is what? How do you say it in German?
Neue. It means
Neue, yeah, sorry, Neue. Yeah. Yeah, so I think, but this is also me being just a design nerd and sort of looking at like Helvetica New and all that sort of thing in sort of, I guess the English bastardization of it. But
nice.
yeah, this was, wanted to sort of do, I come from sort of a healthy diet of, growing up in sort of street culture and skating and graffiti and hip hop and all these sorts of things.
Cool.
So definitely sort of leaned into a lot of that with sort of just these characters, trying to make them sort of like the cool kids at school, and this idea of doing this, kind of monochromatic pattern with, one highlight color, I think just really, I thought was really interesting. Again, a bit different to kind of a lot of the stuff that's out there. So there was just a huge appeal in that.
Nice.
And then what else we got? Psychedelia, obviously, I know we're in a school and I'm sure we've said this, but, Chris and I know sort of, I wouldn't call us proper degens, but, we're definitely like enjoy the space and all the kind of that sort of thing. So, again, vibrant colors, all that stuff, I really love. And that's, one of the biggest assets assets, not the right word, but one of the biggest sort of additions, I guess, that having sort of a very digital focused art world and this NFT movement is to be able to do this hyper kind of colored sort of really saturated, really using the RGB spectrum. So and then also you can just have so much fun with this because just super trippy and super weird and fun and playful and so this was sort of a no-brainer. It could have been one of the first ones I came up with because I just knew that this would just be a really fun place to have a play around. And then the final house is Retro Groove, which is just, again, I suppose, looking back at that nostalgia stuff. And then, again, healthy diet of, kind of watching, movies and, I guess, hip-hop culture, especially 80s, early days, all that sort of stuff, all the early sort of, graph stuff, the wild style, playing on our minds and just really kind of focusing on that and kind of having that sort of retro color palette. So yeah, that's sort of like, an overview of how the four came to be.
That's nice. Do they also have like a story or like is there more to it than obviously it's like a different world for all those four different houses, right? Where they live in, and is there I don't know, is there any utility? We didn't talk about that, I know. Is there something like that I'm missing, or how does it go?
Well, Chris, I don't know if you, so basically, so we've
It's
and I think we kind of mentioned it, is sort of really wanted to start with the sort of art. And I think, Chris, you've said it before, it's sort of that idea of kind of proving yourself before you then prove yourself, as in we wanted to kind of release this and now we go, okay, we've got this. And we had a lot of ideas and a lot of directions prior to the release, but we really wanted to sort of, lay this foundation with this sort of, this initial collection. And then, since then I've gone off and really sort of looked at all these, different sort of, call them roadmap items and utilities and all that sort of stuff, and really trying to look at what can basically serve the story and the creative idea, the concept that we've come up with. So we have just I think a week ago, just kind of given a sort of an overview, a bit of a teaser of some of the stuff we've been off looking into.
Oh, nice.
Here we go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So this is kind of what we're looking at phase 2. I mean, we're kind of treating phase 1 as the launch and basically having created that initial collection. And now this is sort of what we're looking into. I mean, I suppose unlike a lot of roadmap that, a lot of people kind of expect that, especially at the start, we were very modest about that. And we were just, I suppose we just didn't want to feel irresponsible in kind of, one, claiming we're going to do, we're going to have a game and all these things that, and I'm sure, a lot of the times you look at them and you kind of go, well, that's great. Good on you for being ambitious. But if you're claiming you're going to release a game that anyone wants to play in 3 months, then I'm not sure. I don't know if it's just ambition or just being a bit clueless to what's actually involved to have something anyone would want to properly engage with.
True.
So yeah, look, I mean, this is kind of where we're working out. So there is a lot, and I suppose just, probably just being a bit careful what we want to say and not say, Chris, I guess. Just to,
we definitely see this, I guess the tension that we have of talking about a roadmap, while not wanting to give away too much, is that we see this as an experience for anyone that's a holder, right? And so this is a story that's unfolding. And so we have to tread that line between giving away enough to obviously give people confidence that we're still here and that things are going to happen, but also not just telling everyone in advance exactly what's going to happen, because ultimately we want this to be a really great experience, not only for what you get out of it, but just the journey that you go on through holding it as well. And so that's why we kind of I suppose we've from launch been feeling our way, the best way to communicate and how much to communicate what the plans are. And this is kind of what you're looking at here on screen, I guess the culmination of where we feel comfortable kind of like showing where we're going to be taking everyone.
Yeah. And look, I suppose to a lot of roadmaps, which, I mean, having kind of ambitions and ideas, we had all these ideas, but we kind of went off and investigated them and worked through them to then go, no, we're very confident in what this story is and this sort of arc that we've got kind of, in place. So now we'll tell you what we're doing, as opposed to sort of, saying, oh, these are all the things we want to do. Now we've got to run off and figure out how to do them. It's more, we wanted to kind of make sure we were sort of confident and, again, without going into a lot of detail, making sure certain things in here link and, there's sort of, a narrative that passes through all of this. And, there's obviously going to be sort of, various touch points and sort of interactions and rewards, benefits exactly for holders. But, it's just, we just wanted to feel very confident in what we wanted, where we wanted to take it and what we were, our intentions and whatnot. Yeah.
I think some of what has also been part of our process is that, Sam and I have pitched for so many projects for clients. And it's this process of like coming up with a whole lot of ideas, these stories and how they can come together, getting really excited about them. And then ultimately it gets to the client and then, you get half of them shot down or like they end up on the cutting room floor, right? And so like we're at this stage now when all these ideas that we've kind of workshopped, we are essentially our own client here. Like we get to decide what we actually decide to build, which is a fantastic place to be. And so it's also just making sure that we choose, that we do our due diligence and choose those right ones, because there is just like this wealth of things that we want to draw on and do. And so just whittling that list down into something that's really coherent and achievable and really exciting.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that you didn't give out too much in the beginning, and you just focused on the art and on the concept you have, and later on without I don't know, fixating certain ideas or roadmap items. You get confident in what you're doing and really want to go into this or that direction, and then you push it out. I think that's a better way of navigating, and I also think it takes out the pressure for both sides, for the holder and also for you guys, for the team. So yeah, I really love it. I can feel it, how you guys are talking, that it's really about the art, that you guys are confident, and yeah, it's I really like the way you also built the homepage. So it feels more than just a character, I would say, or PFP. You've put so much thought and ideation, I guess, into the world you're creating. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And by the way, I also stumbled upon the little story, or the one or two sentences you put into the OpenSea account. This was also kind of funny, like the end where you said the portrait taken on school photo day, and showcasing the unique. The unique, cool, cute, creepy, and unfortunately some not so beautifully looking kids. So this is also something I really like. It's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Well, I think like again, I suppose Chris mentioned, we've kind of worked on endless briefs with endless clients, and and although Chris, focuses on technology and me sort of at the time, art direction, graphic design, we'd often just come back and go like, what's the idea? Where is the, like, it's, and I think, often that's sort of lacking, and lots of projects don't need that, but that is something we just think is a really nice, kind of a point of difference to a lot of projects. Really developing that sort of world building and that lore. And I think it's especially gives you the opportunity to, we at times we see, we loving being sort of, being in this Web3, the NFT space, et cetera, but it's also, times we go, well, this is kind of one medium to a potential, what else we could, where else we could evolve the brand, and what else this could exist with it. I think ideally, in the long run is, start as an NFT project, but really seeing it as sort of developing a brand. And like, basically if we can kind of grow it out of that as well. I mean, this is obviously where we want to be, and there's so much more to explore here, but I just think there's kind of other opportunities that, arise, and you see lots of projects and lots of them doing it very successfully, whether they're, I don't know, apparel, partnership collabs, all that sort of thing. Or, there's, I mean, obviously you can reference something like Bored Apes and, kind of what the, beyond, the NFT space, what they've done, which is just, amazing. So, I think just having that sort of sense of kind of a concept, a sense of place, a sense of world building, it's just gives us limitless options of kind of to grow it outwards. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds very nice. I'm excited what's going to come up next, because you talked about some items and how you don't want to give away too much info.
Yeah.
So really looking forward to that. Is there anything you would like to share before we wrap this interview up, or?
Chris, I'm not sure if the next steps, like we've kind of got this story unfolding, and we're just, in the background, there's a lot sort of going on, and we're just, I think that the other thing that I guess people, I know time is probably, the biggest factor and the biggest sort of thing that really does put pressure on you, and it's a great thing too. I mean, having a deadline, having that sort of pressure is really that driving force, but at the same time, it's just being very aware that, we're thinking about what we're doing today, how does that interact in 6 months, or doing, just really trying to kind of make sure we lay those sort of, I guess, set the chessboard before checkmate. So, So, there's a lot we could talk about, but Chris, I'm not sure if you wanted to, if there's anything that we think we could go into. I mean, I know you're developing that utility contract, or well, pretty much developed it as far as I can tell. And again, it's not sort of the thing to share necessarily, but it is the keystone to make sure that certain things interact. And some of these things we've laid out in front of you all sort of, I guess, speak to each other when they need to. And yeah.
Sounds good.
I think as well, just the opportunity to shout out to our community as well, right? Just because it's such a great creative place. I think that's one of the things that we love about the community. And we talk about how we're really an art-led project, and it definitely resonates and has attracted a similar like-minded crowd. And so we've got sections in the community where everyone's just sharing not only just sort of how they've been putting their alphas into different scenes, but just their art as well, and all sorts of things. They've been getting their kids involved in coloring in competitions.
Nice.
And that's a side of this, I guess, neither of us really anticipated, but it's just been an absolute joy for us to have as an aspect of the project. So yeah, just a massive shout out to all the guys in the community, all the guys and girls in the community, because it's just awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, so much comes out, there's so many ideas that get sparked and, activated from, whether it's directly or just, people chatting, making, whether it's just the offhanded reference to something, something in school that happened, and, people grow up in, different generations and whatnot. But, yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic, because I think it just really inspires and really helps kind of shape and give us sort of ideas and directions of where to go and where to take this. And obviously is, great sort of just, getting a bit of a sense check of sort of where we're at and what we're doing and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's by far one of the most kind of exciting things to have people around you that at times seem as passionate, if not more passionate. Shout out to Alec and his leg tattoo of one of the alphas. But yeah, no, it's it is really inspiring.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's very I don't know what word to say, but I think heartwarming or very nice to see people out of the community doing stuff for the project, including their kids also, or I don't know, people with coloring and in the drawing sessions, and sounds very cool. Thank you guys so much, Chris and Sam, for taking your time and talking about your project Alpha Academy.